Fair warning, this show contains strong language and adult themes from time to time. Sorry, Jerry can't help it.
Sick Boy Wolfgang Productions presents The Offering with Jerry Horror. A deep dive into the history of film and its filmmakers. Mostly horror, always genre.
Folks, I gotta tell you about mailbox movies. Remember the good old days? Back when Netflix would actually deliver physical media to your mailbox? Do you remember those days? I do. I love them. How often do you find yourself reminiscing about those trips to your local video store, sifting through every single collection, discovering a movie treasure that you've never seen before? If niche is your knack, then Mailbox Movies is the DVD delivery service for you. With simple online ordering and speedy DVD delivery right to your front door, Mailbox Movies has unbeatable prices that will give you more screams for your buck. Now remember, okay? Just remember, because you're gonna need this. Use the code JerryHorror for 50% off your first month. Take a shot. 50% off, how can you not? Don't settle for less. Get the best in horror delivered to your door. Again, that promo code for 50% off is JerryHorror. Head on over to mailboxmovies.com and start your own terrifying movie marathon today. Welcome to The Offering with Jerry Horror, the show where we can have a quiet and frank discussion as adults about the things that matter to me, or at least that I think matter to me. Please take a moment to subscribe to our show wherever you get fine podcasts, and hey, stay up to date on future episodes. Ladies and gentlemen, friends beyond the binary, this is your host, Jerry Horror, and this is The Offering. Folks, I'm always happy to have you back. Got a really special episode today. Able to speak with one of the biggest people that we've ever had on the show. It's Larry Fessenden. He is the godfather of DIY horror. Runs Glass Eye Pix, which is a New York founded company. He's had his hand in everything. His fingerprints have been all over the modern landscape of horror and genre pictures. It is such an honor that I get to sit down today and have a wonderful conversation. It's a fantastic interview. If you want to learn about filmmaking or just even the history of horror, this is a big fundamental part of your knowledge. You're going to need this, okay? Look, you want to be whatever it is, the next Kevin Williamson screenwriter. You want to be Alfred Hitchcock. You want to be the new Jordan Peele. Well, you got to learn about the history of this business and what goes into making these films. And at the end of the day, it's all about passion. You got to love this. Okay, look, the game don't love you back, but you got to love the game because that's how you win, okay? And that's what we're all about here. We're all about winning. So you're thinking to yourself, I want to make a movie. So go fucking make it, because that's what Larry's going to tell you. Larry's going to say, hey, listen, you get your friends. He's going to explain to you. In the interview, he tells you. He's going to tell you how to make a movie. From the rooter to the tutor, from front to back, he's going to explain to you what you need to do and what needs to be a part of that creative process to achieve your dreams, to achieve your vision and bring that vision to the world. You might be passionate about something. It might be Star Trek, might be Star Wars, might be Harry Potter. But don't make a fan film. And I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't make a fan film. And look, if you're a young kid and you want to get yourself started or you want to do this just for fun, go ahead. But I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't make a fan film. And this is why. You don't own it. They're not your toys. It's not your toy box. You can't take it home. And at some point, someone can take it away from you. You might put thousands of dollars into it. Your blood, sweat, and tears. You might ask your Aunt Eileen to come down and be in the movie. And all this time and all these resources, you can't do nothing with it. You can't sell it. And at some point, recently, we had this Gollum film these Lord of the Rings fans made it 15 years ago they made this movie. It's gone on 13 million views. All those 13 million views are gone. You want to know why? Because Warner Brothers is making a new Lord of the Rings movie. And they said, hey, I'm going to tell you what, you can't do that. So they took it down. Now they basically erased it from existence. They send you a cease and desist letter. And they tell you, hey, you can't play with our toys. You can't play in our sandbox. And they can do that to you at any time. And it's a serious deal, especially when you're dealing with a company like Warner Brothers or Universal. They're very litigious. They have no problem using an army of lawyers to get whatever they want. So you spent all this money. You're making your Star Trek fan film. Guess what? Paramount says you need to stop. It's done. It's over. And if you try to make a dime off of this, if you try to screen it, if you try to sell it, you try to make merchandise, you'll be hearing from our lawyers. And you know what? You will. Because why? Because studio, corporate America, they're petty. And they've got the time and they've got the money and they'll shut you down. They don't care. They don't care that Aunt Eileen made everybody brownies. They don't give a shit about that day. They don't care. And I will tell you this. You look at films like Oculus and films like Mama. We're talking about Andy Muschietti film. These were short films that were made on shoestring budgets. And what happens is the creators, the directors, the writers, they use this short film, in this case being short horror films, they use it as a proof of concept for a feature because that's the goal. There's intention. They've set a goal, and the intention is to make a feature film. And as a filmmaker, look, you can do documentaries, you can do shorts. If you're expressing yourself, and you can do corporate movies, you can do whatever you want. But if you want a real piece of that action, you want the game, you want to be on Netflix, you want to be in movie theaters, you got to make feature-length movies. That's just the way it works. It's got to be 82 minutes. You know, the sound's got to be done good. Everything's got to come into play. And that should be your goal because you want the world to see your movie. Look, when I was making monster movies with my friends, we were just happy when a couple of our friends would see them. And people still talk about them today. And that's great because that's community. That's friendship. That's love. But if you want to be an artist and you want your work to be seen, it ain't going to happen with a Michael Myers fan film. I'm sorry. And at any time, like I said, they can take that away from you. It's not yours. So again, Mama, Oculus, proof of concept. This is what we're doing. It's an 8-minute short. And that's how you raise the money. Somebody sees it and they say, okay, I see the vision. I see the vision. I see what you're putting down. And I feel that this is a worthy investment. You know, you look at Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi got people, for whatever reason, he got dentists. They all invested money. I don't know what was up there. Dentists in Detroit. That sounds like a movie. Sounds like a porno film, but I'm just saying. That's how he got his money. And everybody's got a story. And everybody's got a way of doing this. And the reality of it is that it might be fake blood. It might be some rubbery monsters. But at the end of the day, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're trying to execute our vision and bring it to a larger audience. And hey, if we're lucky, you make a couple of bucks. And if you're even luckier, you get to make another one because the first one did okay. But you're not going to be able to do that when you're using other people's intellectual properties. Intellectual properties are the most valuable thing that studios have right now. Whether it's toys, you got a Barbie movie. We're getting a Hot Wheels movie. Did they learn the right lessons? Maybe. We'll find out. You tell me how that Stretch Armstrong movie turns out because you're going to get it. The reason is, I mean, look, we just got that movie with Seinfeld, The Unfrosted. It's about Pop-Tarts. And it was just so cloying and ridiculous. And I don't even have the wherewithal to tell you what's wrong with that movie. That's like a whole episode in itself. But it's a piece of corporate propaganda. It's very much art second and corporate speak first. And it is what it is. I don't want to get into this debate. You know the answers to the questions, whatever. What I'm saying here is that these intellectual properties have value to these studios, and they will continue to recycle them. Someday, maybe you'll get a Happy Days reboot. You'll get a Small Wonder reboot. You'll get it because they know that there is brand awareness. And at the end of the day, that brand awareness is part of their test marketing. And they know that there's a built-in audience and there's a formula because all of this comes down to a numerical formula for them to make money. The studios, the people who own the intellectual properties. And at the end of the day, You are not a part of that equation. You are a consumer, and you're either buying from them or you're not buying from them. You're not their partner, you're not their buddy, and they don't give a fuck that you just made a Michael Myers fan film. Oh, it's because I love the John Carpenter and I love Michael Myers. They don't give a fuck, okay? They're going to cancel you in a very real way. Now, you like Michael Myers? Maybe you make your own Michael Myers. You know, you borrow. People like Tarantino, they know. It's like putting together a great playlist on a mixtape. There were these things called tapes and CDs, and you used to listen to them. But it's a playlist. And you take different elements. And a lot of times that's how a script is made. They take different songs for each scene, and that's how the movie, you know, James Gunn does that a lot. He puts together the different songs. But a good artist knows how to borrow without completely stealing. And that's the deal, man. You make your Michael Myers movie. Maybe it's not Michael Myers. Maybe it's Robert Reed. And Robert Reed is going to kill somebody on Arbor Day because there was an Arbor Day. And there's been a Founders Day. And there's been a million different ways. Everybody's trying to tell the same story, but it's how you spin that motherfucker. That's how this sauce, specifically the special sauce, is made. Same themes: revenge, love lost, the hero's journey. We see these same thematic things over and over again. It's what you bring to the table, okay? We don't need more Star Wars fan films. Do something new. Do something. It doesn't have to be the moon of Endor. It can be something different. You make it up. Get creative. Have fun. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're having fun and being creative. And by process, as an artist, we're bringing new things into the world. And that's what this is all about. Otherwise, you bitch all the time. You say, there's too many superheroes. There's too many Fast and the Furious. Well, guess what? Your fucking fan film isn't helping anybody. It's not. For a bunch of nerds that are sitting around in some convention, oh, it's pretty cool. Oh, Jason totally ripped that girl's head off, kind of like because it's a regurgitation. It's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. In a world of imitators, who wants that? Don't be an imitator. Be an innovator. Change the game. Sign your name on that shit. Etch it out. Let people know that it's got your flavor, your style, one of one. Nobody wants to buy a bootleg Jordan. I don't want bootleg Jordans. I want the real shit. I want the real authentic artist. And the only way you get that is by being yourself. So be yourself. Make good movies. Make original movies. And at the end of the day, you can put your hat on your hat stand. I don't even know what it's called. You can put your hat on your fucking thing, but at the end of your bed, whatever it is you do, and you can say, I did a good job because I did something new. I did something fresh that nobody's seen before. Did I borrow elements from some low-budget science fiction movie? Yes, of course. Because all the people you idolize, whether it's Francis Ford Coppola, whether it's Steven Spielberg, whether it's George Romero, they borrowed from the people that they grew up watching. You know, we get all these great horror and science fiction movies of the 80s. This is because cats like Joe Dante, you know, Robert Zemeckis, they're remixing what they grew up on. And it's cool. But just because you can doesn't mean you should make a Who Framed Roger Rabbit fan film. You'll bust your ass trying to do it. It was hard enough to do the first time, and I don't recommend it doing it a second time because you know what? The world doesn't need that. You know, right now we're recording this in a very nice studio in Manhattan. And I'll tell you what, there's bootleg bags out there. If you want the bootleg bag, you can get it. You can get it. Looks good. It's cool. But there's something about a one-of-a-kind, authentic piece of merchandise that you know only you own. And that's special. And there's nothing more in this world that anybody wants than to be special. So be yourself. Make good movies, make good art, make some shitty ones. You're going to have to make some. Look, first time out the gate, you're not going to knock it out of the park. Okay, look, you know, we'd all love to believe that, you know, that you make that first picture and it's going to be one. No, it's probably going to suck. But you know what? You learn your lessons, you lick your wounds, you get up and you make another one because that's how this is done. This is how you win. This is how you evolve as a creator, is by taking the beatings, learning your lessons from them, and then applying them executing and bringing that fresh, new IP into the world. Because guess what? You made your Star Trek fan film. You can't sell it. You can't. But if you made your own thing, then all of a sudden CBS, maybe Sony comes to you and say, hey, this is really cool. This is a good idea. And they buy it from you. And then you know, it's nothing but blowjobs and Beverly Hills pools for you. You know, it's all, you have a happy ending. It works out. But if you do the Halloween fan film, you're not going to get there. I promise. It's cool. If you want to do it as an exercise, sure. But don't sink your life savings into something you don't own. I promise you. I promise you it's not worth it. But you know what is worth it? Our conversation today with Larry Fessenden. I can't even tell you how much reverence and how much respect I have for this man. He really is one of the architects of the game because he realized very early on that nobody was going to do it for him. And if he didn't do it himself, and we always talk about this, why DIY is so important, not just in punk rock, but why it's so important in life, is that no one's going to save you. No one's coming to save you. You got to do it yourself. Mr. Magic Money Producer, he's not coming down tomorrow. He's not giving you money. Maybe if you're lucky, you married into money and you know somebody and Steven Spielberg's your uncle. But even that only goes so far. You need to be the hero of your own story. And what we learned today through a decades-long career in the movie industry, I learned all kinds of things from Larry. I mean, it's incredible. You don't even have any. This guy, he was going to do a Werewolf by Night movie. It almost happened. But you know what? You're going to have to wait until after the break to find out because we've got one hell of a humdinger episode. Ladies and gentlemen, the maestro, the master, Larry Fessenden. Some people say that you can't get there from here, but my guest will tell you differently. Not many people can say that they embody the DIY ethic that Larry Fessenden has. He walks the walk, he talks the talk, and he's endured for decades within the entertainment industry on his own terms. He's an actor, he's a director, he's an editor, a producer, a writer, and culturally, his fingerprints are on so many things that it would make your head spin. You might not even be aware. I'm probably not even aware. He defies genre. Eye Pix, fierce, independent, New York City-based production outfit headed by art horror auteur Larry Fessenden. You know, Depraved, Beneath, ABCs of Death 2, NBC's Fear Itself episode Skin and Bones, The Last Winter, WENDIGO, Habit, No Telling. Wait, I can keep going for like days here, but we'll talk a little bit about his new film, Blackout. Eye Pix is responsible for narrative films, documentaries, books, comic books, audio plays, and other unique work designed to inspire and contrast with corporate media. Now, secretly, and this is secretly, I mean, you're the listener, this is just between you and me, he's been the maestro who's been mentoring the next generation of iconic talent, whether it's Ted Gagin, Ty West, Travis Stevens, Christian Nilsson, Luca Balser, the list goes on and on. Like I said, Larry's career reads like a rap sheet, my rap sheet, which just goes on and on for days. Because just like a puzzle box or the Ark of the Covenant, there's always more secrets waiting to be discovered in this man's long and storied career. Some folks have called him the John Cassavetes of horror. Some folks call him the maestro. I think he's a space cowboy, but thank you very much for being here, Larry.
This is a blast. That was a great intro. Let's just wrap it up at that. I don't want to disappoint. Right? Yeah.
If we stop there, that's it. It's, you know, because I just, I have a lot of reverence and respect for what you do and your work. When I go through your body of work, it's so incredibly varied. You were in the Killers of the Flower Moon, the Scorsese movie. Like that was just like, where did that come from?
Yeah, well, I have been in a previous Scorsese movie, so Ellen Lewis, the casting agent, she knows me, and I auditioned for Shutter Island. They said I was too crazy, and I auditioned for Wolf of Wall Street, so I don't get it every time, but it was very special being in Killers. I was supposed to be in a real movie, which is to say the be down there for like 3 months, in the background or something as a goon of some sort. But then they cut that character, and then they called me and said, we'll find something else for you. Marty really wants you in this, which is just the way Ellen talks. She's very inclusive. And they had me do the radio play, which was fun because I did radio plays with Glenn McQuaid for years. Tales from Beyond the Pale.
Oh, wow.
So, that just seemed like a fun little Easter egg for the couple of people who love Scorsese and know my work.
Yeah, it was one of these things where I'm like, oh my God, I feel like at any moment, because I remember the first time seeing you as an actor for myself, where I really noticed you, I believe, was in You're Next.
Mm-hmm.
And who's that guy? I like his energy. I'm like, and they kill him. And I'm like, this is some bullshit. I'm like, you were warming up on me.
Oh, that's very sweet. Well, I'm screwing a girl when it starts, so that's always appealing. Then I'm showering, and then I walk out and something terrible's happened to the room, and then I get offed very quickly. But my favorite part of that movie is that later my corpse is just hanging out in the living room, and there's a whole fight scene between one of the bad guys and the final girl, and it's all just happening in front of me. It was fun. All I remember was the rubber glass was this big deal at the time. Talk about a budget.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy because, again, like I'm in with that character and I'm like, this is going to be great. I'm like, we're going to follow this guy. And then I'm like, oh shit, no, he's dead. I'm like, fuck, this isn't going to work at all.
Yeah, so that was really cool. Simon Barrett and Adam Wingard, who are now making Godzilla movies, they invited me to be part of it. And they also brought Barbara Crampton back from retirement, so to speak. She'd gone off and become a mother, and they invited her back. And now, of course, she's doing great stuff in the genre. So
it's crazy.
It's a fun, seminal movie. I remember when it sold, it was a big deal. I think Simon said, I can buy an island now, which seemed like, wow, I haven't seen an MG like that in my career. So, those guys are great.
It's crazy because you look at, speaking of Barbara Crampton, you look at that picture she did, Jacob's wife.
Yeah.
To me, that's the kind of movie, if it came out in the 80s, it would have been number one for 2 weeks.
Right, that's right.
And it's such a great little genre movie. And I feel like I talk about this a lot, about the monoculture, how everybody used to be on the same page. Well, what did you watch? I watched The Love Boat. There were 3 fucking channels. That's all you could watch. Yeah. So I feel that there's a little bit of that missing. Everybody is so segregated, whether it's music, whether it's movies, whether it's television. Everybody's on their own page. They got their own playlist, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it's just nice to see Barbara working. And we're going to get into Barbara. Don't worry. We'll talk all about Barbara. She's beautiful. Barbara, hello. My name's Jerry. I know.
Easy now, soldier.
So basically what I would ask you, here's the thing. You do everything. And that really is, and that's why you are the king of DIY. I mean, that's why you've influenced so many people, including myself, my friends, everybody. The reality of it is this. So you're watching a movie. Usually people are like, what was the movie that defined? No, we're not going to do that question. Yeah. The question that I want to know is, what movie did you see and you said to yourself, I want to do this? Or not even I want to do this, I think I can do this.
Those were 2 separate ideas. The first thing is I saw King Kong when I was, 6. I just saw it in a hotel room. I was waiting for my family to take care of something or whatever was going on. And I just remember how cool that was. What made me think I wanted to do it? Well, you see, I grew up in the 70s. It was unclear how you would ever get into film. It seemed like a whole other world. There wasn't all this access we have now. Even things like making ofs on Blu-rays is that's almost gone. But the point is, Premiere Magazine, all these things happen over the years. So my real access was falling in love with actors. You see, I loved James Cagney when I was little. I loved Boris Karloff, obviously, from the horror genre. Yeah. And so it was really about just wanting to be an actor. I did some stage work. I struggled with stage fright while also just getting so off on it. And so I was thinking that was something that I could do because you could do it at school. And then actually I did direct One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I wrote the whole play myself and I directed it in school, and I got all the cool people to be in it as the crazy people. And that was a very seminal moment. So the point is I was just coming at it from the point of view of trying to get gigs. And then I started editing for people because I bought 3/4 inch equipment. And, that's how I met actors and performance artists, and I started working with them, and then I would encourage them to do their shows, because they'd come to my place to do like a show reel.
Yeah.
And I would edit that, and then I would say, oh, and what are you doing next? And they'd say this and that, and I'd say, oh, well, one thing you could think of, and so on. So it was sort of this very organic way to start producing, collaborating. And then I would rent my equipment or do whatever. So then the little community built, people who were also trying to break into movies, either through doing ads or whatever they were doing. And then I made reels for people like Steve Buscemi, who was in the neighborhood as a performer. So it just built. I mean, I was in New York City in the 80s, and things were happening. Vital community, Keith Haring on the subways, and all that vibe. The art scene was very vibrant and so on. So, and then I played music, played at CB's. So just was coming up in the scene. I went to NYU as a college, so I had access to equipment. We had a cable access TV show. Me and my pals, we'd shoot on the weekends, and then I learned to edit because I had to fix all the mess we made.
Yeah.
Nobody wrote their lines. Nobody figured out what to do. So I put it all together, and it was sort of like a crazy variety show, and it had so that was another thing. I just loved video editing. And then I thought, I'll make a movie this way because it's so cheap to work in video. So I made a movie called Habit, not the one that maybe you've seen, but the precursor, 1981, and it had that idea of what would it really be like to meet a vampire. You wouldn't believe it. That's the basic premise. Most horror movies, at least at that time, were, well, this is a horror movie, and they have the scary music, and on it goes. But I was like, I want it to creep in and basically be about madness and just what would it be like, and you wouldn't believe it, and your friends wouldn't believe it. You'd be isolated and alone. So that became a theme that I still work with. It's what Blackout's about also. This isolation of getting involved with the supernatural. And I'm telling you, it just makes you feel so alienated.
It's funny because you go from like, all right, if we're going back in time, we talk about like the Hammer horror films. Yeah. And it's these big Gothic castles, and there's mist. And then once we hit the 70s and you start getting stuff like, even like Carpenter's Halloween, it becomes like, oh no, horror is right here. It's in your backyard. It's on your doorstep. And then I think there's an element of psychological horror that seems to echo throughout all of your pieces. Like, you just did this movie, Blackout. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Blackout. I liked it. The kid and he's not a kid, he's the guy.
You're showing your age, buddy.
The kid who's the actor, he was very good. I liked him a lot.
Yeah.
If I was a more prepared host, I'd have his name and I'd know what it was, but he gave a great performance. And I'm going to throw this out there. You're going to think I'm crazy, but we always talk about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Right.
And it's kind of like this allegory, maybe for sanity, maybe for sobriety.
Right.
I got this major vibe. This character is going through something here. And obviously, I don't want to give away too much of the film, folks. If you haven't seen it, Blackout, it's available everywhere. And I'm saying something like, is there kind of like an underlying thing of like sobriety? Am I crazy in this or?
No, not at all. He's definitely a drunk, and he talks about it with his girlfriend. You figure they broke up because he's a drunk, or at least that's how the world sees him. And there are references to that, and I certainly did that in Habit. That was also an addiction parable of sorts. Of course, there you have the idea of blood and so on. With Blackout, which is called Blackout because he blacks out.
Yeah.
And he can't remember what he's done as a werewolf. So maybe that's really just a metaphor for a bad drunk. I leave it open. It's not as, doesn't track fully ambiguous the way Habit does. You really never know if this woman is a vampire. But in Blackout, I still leave that open because I'm trying to sort of celebrate how these monster stories speak to us, speak to real problems that we have, both, and as I say, at its most fundamental is the alienation of being a human.
Of course.
You can't relate to other people, or you feel like they don't understand you, and that's just across the board. Whatever your particular issues or vantage point is, I think that's sort of a fundamental truth. It's, this is old school existentialism, we're all alone, you live as you dream alone. Yeah. So yeah, I would argue that you nailed it about Blackout. I mean, it's about other things too.
Of course.
But it's,
there's a lot going on.
At its fundamental, it's funny. Yeah. Some people say it's overstuffed. I don't agree. I think it's all connected. You see all these issues. I think what's happened, you were talking about everything being divided up in the world now because everybody has their own cable channel and their own, it started, I remember, with magazines. Like there was the fishing magazine and the magazine for every conceivable interest. Whereas when I was growing up, you'd read a newspaper, it had all the topics in it. You know what I'm saying? The whole idea if we had a more common purpose as a society, where there was still infighting, of course, and political differences, but there were certain basic assumptions that now everybody's like, everyone has their own truth.
Yeah.
Which is funny because that's what I've been complaining about all along, is like how isolated humans are. So all my movies have sort of been about this conversation that's sort of taken over.
Well, I think when you look at mainstream horror, we always I always tell people about there's rules. You got to have rules. You got to have this. You got to have that. With your films, there seems to be an ambiguous nature,
right? Which
I think is more grounded in reality. And what's happened is, as things have become so homogenized, people are used to that slurry. They're used to that slurry of meat and protein or whatever it is. And they're like, okay, they know what it feels like. They're satiated. And I think the problem, and the horror audience is fine. The horror audience likes to be challenged. People who are into this, they like to think outside of the box.
Sure.
But for the most part, the larger consumer, the streamer of content.
Yes.
Maybe it's always been this way. I don't know. But the reality of it is that even now, your films, we got streaming. It's, we romanticize things. You used to have to work. I had to go out to the movie theater. I go to the movie theater every week because I'm nuts. To me, that's my church. That's where I get to be alone with my thoughts and the world goes away. But for a lot of people, going to the video store, it was ritualistic. They remember more going with mom and dad or their friends or whatever it was. And now you've got everything all at once. Now I don't have to go to the mom and pop and say, well, they don't have Wendigo.
Right.
So I have to go to we would have to drive to another store and then find the film.
All of that, the scarcity was what defined my generation. You found famous monsters of filmland and eventually Fangoria. These were your Bibles, if you're going to go with the church imagery of the drive-in or the theater and the video store. Exactly. I mean, I know a couple of my pals who came up through Glass Eye, Graham Resnick and also Ty West. They saw the box of Habit and they loved the logo.
Yeah.
And that's why they rented it. It just seemed like this, it evoked something to them, which is to say that graphics mattered more. Back to the scarcity thing. The poster mattered more because now you don't even have posters. You don't even have marquees on, at least in New York.
Yeah.
It just assumes you're on your phone. I'm like, it used to be so fun to walk and see all the posters and contemplate and know that, somebody had designed that and they were trying to, remember when it went from painted posters to photographic posters, all the minutia of being a fan. And there were movies where you only knew the still. You never even saw the movie. My favorite example is The Reptile, which is like this woman who's a reptile head. And she's just, I've never seen that movie, but I know that image,
It sold you because people are walking by, for instance, we'll go back to the VHSs. They're walking by your video box and you've got 1 second, Toxic Avenger. That looks interesting,
Exactly.
And you've got to grab them. And I think it really is a lost art.
And there was anticipation and so on. Now everybody knows you sit there in front of the streamer and you just see endless posters. You're scrolling. You're not engaged. I mean, look, this is an overview. There's many pleasures and it's fun to be able to say, oh, I want to see that movie and sort of find it. And there's other things like Criterion where they're being more curatorial. Obviously Shudder is too. Yeah. Shudder was really especially exciting when it started and you really felt they were holding your hand and inviting you in and you're learning new things. So obviously there's advantages to all this. And sometimes when they recommend something, if you like this, you like that. So those things exist. But it was the scarcity and the rituals and, the Friday night, let's get 3 movies and that's our whole weekend. And, then you committed to things more, especially in the theater, of course. But even with a video, that's the thing and you're like, wow, did we blow it? And that was part of it. Or What a Gem, who knew? I saw Man Bites Dog, one of the nastiest movies ever made, at my parents' place in Cape Cod. You know, what the hell was it even doing in such a hallowed, you know, vacation spot? And, you know, we took it home and it was like a complete assault. One of my favorite movies ever, you know, and yet I've never really seen it again. But that was such a seminal experience because it was so contrary to where we were, you know what I mean? Speaking
of which, if you remember Film Threat magazine,
of course, I was just on there, you know, as a podcast. They still go. It's
crazy because I had to order Man Bites Dog because I wanted to see it. I had to order it from the back of the magazine.
From the back of the magazine, yeah,
6 to 8 weeks shipping.
It was over there with the porn titles.
Like, and the thing is if I'm trying to explain to, you know, some of the younger listeners, like, it's like I'm from another fucking planet, you know. I'm trying to
well,
explain
they also assume that you've suffered from this lack of, but no, I mean, it built a whole other ethos of commitment. Like, you track that movie down and you're like, I'm going to find that movie. There's something about it talking to me, speaking to me. So yeah, those things are, so, I mean, there's still great cinephiles out there, and thank God for that, people who really care about this medium. But the other thing is needless to say, that the attention span and all of that is under threat. So it's, anyway, well, we brought up a lot of things. So, yeah, the Hammer movies. I mean, I just wanted, you know, I loved monsters and horror my whole life. And then I got to the 60s, and which is to say, then in the 70s, when I was able to actually go to movies, I'm finally like 12 years old or whatever. I saw Jaws in the theater. Then I just like 70s movies and Nicholson and De Niro and those crop of guys, and Dustin Hoffman and whatever, Gene Hackman. And so then this idea of sort of social realism seemed really appealing, but I was like, but wait, I'm not leaving the monsters behind. So I tried to create this hybrid of sort of psychological realism. And the thing about the 80s, you're right, that was happening with Carpenter, Regular, Neighborhoods, but I never favored the slasher guy. Mm-hmm. I like the supernatural because I love to sort of also suggest there's something about being alive that there's a mystery there. Of course. And it's not just like the bad guy with a knife, though, of course, Home Invasion, we've just talked about Man Bites Dog. There's some great movie. I just watched Henry Serial Killer recently again, and that was just mind-blowing and bleak, very bleak. But still, like, if I'm going to go there, I want to do it that way, you know, with the real sort of nastiness. Anyway, I'm just saying I like monsters and mysteries and full moons and creaking trees and that sort of thing. So
it's crazy because you know what we talk about on the show, where like every 5 to 10 years, Universal gets a wild hair up their ass and they try to relaunch the monsters.
Fuck it up every time.
Every time.
The
Invisible Man picture wasn't bad. It was
fine. That and it was good. What we were talking about. And I have in fact, I was very competitive with Wolfman when it was Rai going to play him. That would have been so crazy because, you know, you'll have a natural affinity to him as sort of just a dude, and then whatever they were going to do with it would have been interesting. But even still, I'm interested what they'll do.
Of course. But they always try to, and it's crazy because you went, and we talk about DIY, you have your own universe of monsters
I agree.
You've created.
But I tried to sell out. Everybody always like, oh, you're just DIY. It's like, I've done everything I could. You know, in the old days, I was auditioning for Wrong Turn and Chainsaw 5 and, you know, all this sort of thing. But it didn't come to pass, which is fine. I was honest in my pitches. I usually said, let's make it really realistic. And they're like, wait, what? In fact, it was precisely when they were making everything like an MTV movie. You know, the Chainsaws that has all the edits and the pretty boys and all that. That was the one that I was trying to do. Jesus. So my point is that, but then my real passion is, or I just became possessed with making my own versions of these classic monsters. So I pitched Depraved, which is my Frankenstein story, for 9 years. And then I just said, fuck this. This is, I don't know if I can swear, but. Oh, good. Fuck this, I said. And this is just exhausting. And, you know, trying to impress these people. And you do the meeting and then they just hand you a comic book and say, why don't you do this? I got handed Priest. Well, that's fine. Good. And I can't remember if it was a good movie. But the point is like, dudes, I'm trying to do this other thing. Can I do that? No. And I did go to Miramax, years ago and tried to make Werewolf by Night, which was a comic book that I read. Of course. And they said, we thought you were an outsider filmmaker. I'm like, dude, what? I have this reputation. It's only the 80s. What's happening? I'm a kid. Anyway, they didn't want me, and that's fine. So years later, I just made Blackout with no money. And
it's funny because even Werewolf by Night, that all the monster comics, once the comics code had been lifted in the 70s, you finally got Tomb of Dracula.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I'm growing up in the 80s. People are like, why do you love Ghost Rider? Why do you? I'm like, because I would go to the comic book store. I could buy these things by the fucking pound.
Yeah, exactly.
House of Dracula, and it was the Dark Shadow stuff, and I'm like,
it's so true. You felt part of the. I mean, you knew you were a freak.
Yeah.
But you still felt part of some sort of secret society,
Yeah.
Which, I'm sure genre people have that now still, of course, because everybody's compartmentalized. But it was glorious, while the other kids are buying Spider-Man, I'm there with Werewolf by Night, and then Creepy and Eerie was obviously a different format, but that was awesome as well.
It even I'm thinking about myself, I was thinking about this the other day. I have a Lon Chaney tattoo here.
Oh, sweet.
And it's from a movie.
I love that that's with Michael too.
Well, we've never seen this movie. This movie doesn't even exist anymore.
That's what I'm saying. But it lives in the mind. It's what London After Midnight, folks. Just the coolest image.
That's the ambiguity. And I think, to me, at least for my money, it's always what you don't see.
Yeah.
That's the scary part to me. I got to tell you, I love. Look, folks, it's on PlayStation Plus right now this month. Who knows? Next month it'll be gone.
Yeah.
But Until Dawn is on there. And Until Dawn is pretty much like a choose-your-own-adventure horror video game.
Yep.
And I played the shit out of this game.
Awesome.
And I had no idea that you were involved with it. And it was one of these things where I was like, we could watch a horror movie. And I remember when it first came out, I was like, no, check this out. And I got so many people into the game because
awesome.
You're sitting there watching it. And it's like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to go left? Do you want to go right? Do you want to make this decision? Larry, how did that come about, the Until Dawn video game?
So very simply, I was invited to meet with these two guys, and they turned out they were British. I met them over at a table at my sort of associate's space, so she knew them. And they started talking about this video game. And I confess, I didn't grow up in the 80s, so I'm not a video gamer. And I was like, okay. But then they started saying things like Blackwood Mountain and Jack Fiddler. And I was like, wait a minute, those are all Wendigo references. And then it turns out that they'd invited me to audition for this script because they had Wendigos in it.
Yeah.
And I'd already made a movie called Wendigo and The Last Winter. Those both have Wendigos. So,
Wendigo might be one of your favorite movies of mine.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's atmospheric.
Yeah, I love that movie.
And I love the cast. So basically they laid it out. They said, this is a game we're trying to put together. And, we like your movies. And they said, we want it to feel like a horror movie. And then, but choose your adventure and so on. So that was their ambition. And these guys were awesome. This is Supermassive Games from the UK. And they were really, really committed to a quality production in every way. Well, I'd never played a video game. I had instincts and thoughts. So I called my pal Graham Resnick, who's just a little younger than me. And he grew up with everything, Tetris and, whatever it is, Pac-Man and so on, all the way to hacking stuff and so on. So I said, let's do it. Let's write this script. Actually, he's the one who said, let's really do it, Larry. And in fact, he kept saying, we have to finish it. Isn't it due on Thursday? I'm like, yeah, whatever. We wrote this script. We had the best time. It was just one scene that's actually in the movie, technically. I mean, it's in the game relatively unscathed. It's when the two kids break off from the others and goes up to the cabin. It's kind of where everything starts going wrong. Anyway, and we got the gig. So we've worked on it for like 3 years. And because we did it in PlayStation 3, and forgive me, I'm so unversed, which it's now at 4.
It's at 4, we're at 5. We're at 5 now.
Yeah, well, so anyway, we wrote the whole thing in 3, and the motion capture wasn't as sophisticated as it is now. So what happened is that we wrote it for a year and a half. We had all this stuff, but it's mostly dialogue. And then they said, we can get more emotion out of these actors. So we rewrote the whole thing with much more, performance, and we stripped a lot of the dialogue out. Now, it's important to know, Graham and I would be working from direction that they'd create. They'd say, we want the character to do this, and there'll be 4 branching. So in the end, we decided 10,000 pages, and we're in the Guinness Book of World Records. It's the longest script. And it wasn't a joke, because we wrote it twice, for one thing, and then all the branching, every scene you're in, I'm sure if you've played it many times, it can go different ways. But,
and that was the fun of it. It was
a total fun. And then literally learning about motion capture over a couple of years, we saw that get better. And it was really, really cool. And of course, working with Rami Malek and the other cast. And then I got to play my guy. So I'm in it. And when I went to Comic-Con that year, I've never felt more famous. It was kind of sweet. It just reminded me, I make indie movies that no one's heard of. But as the flamethrower guy, I was the cat's pajamas, and the kids would all be cosplaying as all the other characters.
Yes,
Nobody thought to play me, but so then I could complete the picture. So I must take 10,000 selfies that day.
It's amazing.
That Comic-Con. It was a blast, and just knowing how beloved it had become.
It seems like a Faustian bargain to write that. Like, even when you're playing it, you're like, Jesus Christ, like how much of this, I mean, what was it? I mean, not to be a dick, but was it nightmarish at a certain point where you're writing this thing and you're like, did you get lost in it?
Not really. That was the fun part. Me and Graham, we would, he moved to LA during this process. So eventually we do it by, I guess in those days, Skype, not Zoom, but, and we would just spend literally like 6 hours on one scene. Just we often one of us would write it the first pass. Then we'd go back and we did what we called punch-ups, and we'd just we'd back and forth and try to make it better or funnier or scarier or whatever. But as for keeping track, I mean, as I say, it was mapped out in many places. So obviously we were responding to their needs, because the designers were building, if you will, it's almost like they're building their sets and they're filming. And so they're like, you have to get your characters from here to there, psychologically realistic, and you have to have these branches. But so, I mean, that was the fun of it. We were really committed to it. And I was too. It didn't bother me that it was a medium I wasn't necessarily familiar with, because I love the Choose Your Adventures game. I remember when they invented, what were those called? The big discs, the Blu-rays, the first version of
video discs.
Yeah. What the hell were they called? Anyway, where you'd buy a movie and it was on a thing the size of a record.
Yep.
But
Video Vision.
Yeah,
Video
all
Vision,
those fun things. And the promise was digital would allow you to jump around in a story. And so even as a kid in the 80s, the potential was so cool that you could have different endings for movies. So in that way, this was a lifelong ambition to sort of work in this medium. In the end, we wrote like 4 or 5 others, Man of Medan, a couple of more bleak, like procedurals with terrible serial killers. None of them were as popular, but so we kept at it. And Graham was involved in The Quarry. So,
yes.
So he carried on the mission. I abandoned ship, but it was fun. And it was never as, if I could say that, it was just never with the 2 guys as committed, the head of Supermassive, working together. It was just a really beautiful. These things happen. Some movies hit, and other projects, they're a little bit more by rote. So I'm just so blessed to have been part of. And the cool thing is, my favorite other element of Until Dawn is that Sony UK was behind it, but Sony US, not so much. So they didn't promote it.
Yeah.
So it actually was a cult hit, even though it's from a major label. And I believe that the head of Sony eventually, when it hit gold or platinum or whatever, did a mea culpa and said, we should have supported this.
Yeah.
And thanks for making it a hit. It was very sweet.
It's one of those things where it was my dream. It was my dream to be an active participant
Exactly.
in the genre.
Inside a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
What a cool, and that's how the guys sold it to us. And then it had Wendigos. I was happy as a clam. I couldn't have been happier.
Once I saw that, I'm like, wait,
shit.
it all of a sudden, like all these pieces came together for me. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now.
We'll be right back with more of The Offering with Jerry Horror.
Need more for your gore decor? HauntedProps.com has been a leading online Halloween retailer since 2006. And now, the company has opened the first and only year-round Halloween showroom on Long Island. The entire store is decorated and themed with immersive scenes. Yes, the whole thing is set up like a walk-through haunted attraction, and you're literally shopping in a haunted house. They've got gore props, haunted house props, costumes, masks, makeup, and did someone say animatronics? They've got those too. Designed to last and built to scare. Do you need legit-looking props for your film set or photo shoot? HauntedProps.com offers consumer-grade and professional-grade props. They've got something scary for any budget. Here's an idea. You need a location for your event? Haunted Props is a fantastic spot for flea markets, music festivals, carnivals, a haunted house, obviously, and any outdoor event you can dream of. Do yourself a favor. Go to the store in Manorville, Long Island, or order off the website, HauntedProps.com, where you can buy what scares you. Listeners and fans of The Offering can get their hands on their very own The Offering with Jerry Horror merch, now only at TeePublic. Find your own fresh The Offering with Jerry Horror high-quality merchandise, including t-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, long sleeves, stickers, and mugs. Just like the show, we've got gear that's mostly horror, always genre. The Offering with Jerry Horror TeePublic store has everything you need to represent your favorite podcast. Folks, head on over to teepublic.com right now and pick up your very own Offering tee today. You're listening to The Offering with Jerry Horror. Got a question or a story you want to share with me? It might be featured in a future episode. Email me at jerryhorror@gmail.com or hit me up on Twitter at jerryhorror. I'm also on Instagram. You can find me there at jerryhorror. Rate and review this show on Apple Podcast, and you might find your review in an upcoming episode. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to The Offering. Now back to the show. It's one of those things where you've mentored a lot of these guys. And like I was reading the other day that Ty West shot House of the Devil. I love House of the Devil. Mm-hmm. I'm obsessed with it. I love it. I think it's a great film. Yep. People always like, what's the best horror film in the last 10 years, 15 years? I'm getting old at times. I got COVID brain fog. I still think it's 2015.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And I tell people, I'm like, have you seen House of the Devil? Now, he shot that on 16 millimeter. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, I mean, come on, we talked about you shooting stuff on 3/4 inch. So you ran the gamut.
I did run the gamut because I guess the 90s, I finally started making movies in celluloid. I shot Habit in 16. Wendigo in Super 16, last winter in Super 35, which you're saving a third of the film, and on it went. I didn't do a digital feature of my own until Beneath. And you know, whenever the filmmakers were, like Ty made House of the Devil, and his first movie is The Roost, which I produced, and that we shot 16. But then his second movie, he had a real tussle with Hollywood with, Cabin Fever 2, and he disowned it and the whole thing. But then he came crawling back to Glass Eye, and we made a movie called Trigger Man. We shot that on a video camera. So every project's different is all I'm trying to say.
Well, I mean, did you, like when he said, like, we're going to shoot House of the Devil, I think it was 2009, but he says to you, like, because now that we live in this digital world, it's like when someone tells you they want to shoot something on celluloid, are you crazy?
Absolutely not. I'm all for it. I got a movie now we're looking to make somehow, and we're talking about shooting film just for the fun of it. And I made a movie called Most Beautiful Island by Anna Asensio, and that we shot film. It was an aesthetic choice. And, there are a lot of arguments that, I make them anyway, that film, clarifies the mind. You're only going to get 3 takes. You're not going to get more. So let's everybody pay attention. And that what I'm getting at is you don't necessarily waste money because the truth, or, spend extra money, because the thing is everybody's a little more focused. We made I Sell the Dead in film, 35 mil. And that was crazy, but it was a really smartly run production, and that's got Ron Perlman and Dominic Monaghan. It's a wonderful, ambitious movie, and it went way over the original budget, but it didn't go over budget. It just was not the little scrappy picture we started out, because we started getting the movie stars, and we're like, well, this is fun. Angus Scrimm is in it. It's a lovely.
I've seen it. It's good.
It was Perlman's favorite movie for the longest time. He just loved it. It's very concise and beautiful.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies where you see it and then, like you recommend it to somebody. It's not one of the, it's not on the list. It's not.
I know it's not on any list, but I guess it's so weird. And in a weird way, it might appear old-fashioned because it's a period piece. We shot in Old England for Staten Island was so cool, man. We did everything in Staten Island, and there's an old fort there. It was just a nice producing effort, and getting those actors. We had to wait for a year for Ron Perlman because he was doing Hellboy 2, and we were like, Ron, we're going to wait for you, all right? And he said, sure. So we shot half the movie, and then we shot the scenes with him and Dom in a different time period, which is something I love doing, breaking open. If you're going to be on your own and nobody's helping you and you don't have a lot of money, you can at least make the movies on your own terms. And the fact that we stopped for a while, Glenn was able to actually edit the material, and he became literally a better filmmaker because he was waiting around. Then when Ron came and we did one major scene after that, that is just clearly the best directed sequence. So, this is the thing. We're also in the business of learning to be better artists. That's sort of the kind of conversation I like. That's why I'm a producer, is to talk to people about what are we doing and, what's the purpose. And, I always respect it. People say I mentored Ty. Well, no, I let Ty do what he wanted because I had an instinct that he was right. But he knew that we were all trying to better the work. And, his whole thing is the slow burn, which we joke about because it's also a trap, because not everybody goes for this stuff. But I think those who do really care about what makes them feel different. And they're not, we all know that Blumhouse has given us a lot of entertainment, and I don't dislike Blumhouse, but, it is like, oh my God, saturation of, when they hit something, then you're going to get 5 more doll movies and 5 more this and that, Purge movies and so on. So it's a little exhausting.
It's like people talk about, A24 is this gigantic label and they're doing great stuff. I mean, Jesus Christ, they might have Spielberg for a film. Who would have seen that?
True?
Yeah, they're talking about doing something with him, and the reality of it is,
I hope he makes something small, because I'm going to interrupt, but please continue. But I'm just going to say, when I did get an article in the New York Times years ago, and I said, Marty, Stevie, and I mentioned one other big shot, and I said, just make one small movie again, because we love you for your filmmaking, not your budgets. And so maybe this is what the A24 movie will be.
I recently saw The Phantom Menace, the Star Wars. It's the 25th anniversary.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm saying to myself,
did you go on May the 4th?
I didn't. I went corporate holiday.
Yeah,
May
exactly.
The 4th. I went on May the 8th, and I was the only person in the theater.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was sitting there by myself. It was another lonely evening, but I was very happy. And the reality of it is, I'm like, this is the last film that Lucas shot on 35 millimeter.
Oh, wow. That's wild.
It is a deeply weird, it's basically a big budget, weird, independent movie.
Totally.
And I'm just like, George, I know you're upset. I know this thing has whatever, but just give this guy, let him make another THX 1138, something small, something, because that's, even that was a film that had a lot, it was basically, a lot of people, there's directors, like I feel like Paul Verhoeven saw the future. Yeah. Lucas saw the future.
Yep.
And you had a lot of that biting social commentary, especially you're coming up, your formative years, you're watching these movies. Hollywood had imploded. They didn't know what to do. They're like, how do we appeal to young people? So the 70s, this is rebirth.
Yeah. And
to me, the biggest part of horror that works is when it makes you think. And I think nobody nailed it more than Romero. Romero, look, you've got action, you got maybe some boobs, you got something going on, but you've got biting social commentary.
Absolutely.
And that became like a bad thing. That became like a bad.
Oh,
I don't
dear,
know.
I didn't get the memo because I'm still at it.
I was told that's a bad thing.
It's because nobody wants to be challenged. But as I say, I think there's a lot of horrors is a safe place for identity discussion. So there's that. I mean, it's keeping up in its own way with the trends. But yeah, as far as my own engagement with the social issues or whatever, I mean, to me, it's all philosophical. I used to say that I make philosophical horror movies, and that's because I'm trying to sort out, like, what is this experiment of being a human? Yeah. And then I obviously talk about all the loneliness and so on. But at the same time, the opposite of that is how do we get along? And then that leads to some political things. I'm not a partisan filmmaker, but, I made a movie about climate change. And I was just about nobody can agree on how to sort through this because we can't even agree if it's happening. And people have different self-interests. So that's an observation about humanity as well as, and I always say, well, I don't know. Anyway, and also the reason they're horror movies and not some other thing, they're not documentaries, they're not dramas necessarily. They're horror because I'm saying, this is horrific. We can't get along. We can't fight the monsters.
We are the monster.
We are the monster. And even Beneath, which is a very maligned film of mine, but to me, it's a satire about these kids. There's a fish in the water that's eating all of them. And all they're doing is dredging up old resentments about girlfriends and boyfriends and who was at the prom and who's going out with who. And they just start cannibalizing each other and throwing them in the drink. The fish eats them. This to me is like, well, that's like our Congress. Nobody can get along. What's going on? This is a clown show. This is horror. Yeah. Like, what the fuck? Is nobody invested in trying to work things out? This would seem like the thing. So
that was even in Blackout. There's race relations. I didn't see that coming. I was like, oh, shit. I'm like,
But it's also, to me, I don't set out like, oh, I have to get this off my chest. But it's so part of it. You see the movies about a monster who's a guy during the day. So I'm like, you mentioned Jekyll and Hyde. Yeah. He's a very divided personality, and he's dealing with his, quote, dark side or whatever goes on when he's on that other side. Did he really kill those people? And so the whole thing, it brought to mind division in a single person. And then, the old biblical thing, a house divided shall not stand. So then I was like, oh, cool. I'll have a priest say that. And then I'm like, this is a whole town will be divided as we are now as a nation through our politics and our bad information and our inability or even unwillingness to try to communicate across divisions anyway. And then within all that comes the idea of scapegoating. Which is how the racism comes in. They're just saying, oh, it's the Mexicans causing trouble because they have the dude who says that has another agenda. So I'm not telling you what's what, and that's not a Trump stand-in. It's just like, this is what's going on. We got to talk about it. We've weaponized all this things that are supposed to just be what you do in society is figure out how to get along. And so that's why these movies have that tenor. It's not, well, I would love to change the world, but I mean, I don't know if making horror movies is the way to do it. But I'm going to put in some of my other concerns. So, I mean, Depraved is about the pharmaceutical industry. Yep. It's about who's motivated, but it's also personal stuff. Like, you can tell the guy that finances the monster, he just wants credit. There are lines where he's like, you couldn't have done that without me, which is just like how we all are in the sandbox, know. He wants importance. And then you finally meet him in his context of his family, and you can tell he's just, if I can say it, pussy whipped because his wife is rich and he isn't, and he, so it's a portrait of that character. Well, who are the villains in our, monster movies? Well, they're not just mustache tweaking mad scientists, or let's say, but what would make a guy a mad scientist? So I thought, well, he comes back from Iraq and he got PTSD. He couldn't save all those guys out there. Yeah. So now he's like, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll beat death, in the lab here. And he gets his friend to finance it. And he says, we'll use some drugs so you'll get famous, whatever. So it's just like you sit down to write Frankenstein because you just love Boris Karloff as the monster. And you're like, so how does this work now? How would this go down? And then I thought, oh, I want it to happen in Gowanus because Gowanus is cool. And so then you're like, oh, Frankenstein in a Brooklyn loft. I'm already digging this movie, you see, so that's how I build a picture. And then in the end, yes, it's about PTSD in Iraq, and it's about pharmaceuticals and all those, yelling at the man kind of stuff. But I grew up in the 60s. That's what you're supposed to do because the world's so fucked up.
One of the things I like about vampires and say Dracula is that they can't see their reflection, or they don't leave a reflection.
Oh, dude, I had never thought of that. Along these lines, the whole idea, we don't see ourselves.
And that's the thing is that the real scary part.
I'm going to have to use that, Jerry.
But the real horror is holding that mirror up to society and saying, well, this movie's bullshit and I didn't like it. Well, you know what? You're just holding up the mirror to them. So if you don't like what you're seeing, maybe you need to make some fucking changes.
I agree. And thank you for bringing Romero into it, because that's what he did so well. I mean, even his later movies, a lot of people, ran out of steam with him. But I love Diary of the Dead. And he was anticipating, the internet generation and but he also did it. And this is what's cool. And that's sort of the world I live in. He did it because he couldn't raise a lot of money. So he said, I'll do it on a handy cam. So it was two things, form and content coming together. Same with casting Dwayne Jones. That was because he was the best actor in the group when the original actor dropped out. And then it became this beautifully politically loaded, but he never changed the script. So it's just there's a black dude who's acting like the hero in the movie. And so it becomes political or I don't know if the word is political. See, that's the thing. I don't really like that term.
I don't even know anymore.
It's just so rancid. What politicians are up to and their way of playing the public space is just, it's so...
Well, they're not living in our world.
Yeah, it's
politicians, they're in their own
Talk
bubble.
About horror. Like, it reminds me of They Live, which I've recently thought about, that movie where you put the glasses on, you see the real deal.
Yep.
I mean, talk about a political movie, but is it not fun?
We're there.
Exactly.
There is, going back to the bubble, everybody is in their own little...
Yeah.
And they have this safe zone. And they like to be force-fed these things.
Oh, yeah.
You like the left, you like the right, you can eat it just like a big old hog.
Exactly.
Just shove it all down.
Shove it on down.
Get it
more, faster.
Whatever you want.
Yeah.
And the thing is that that is why artists do what they do.
Yeah.
Because art at some point, especially film, we have to say no.
Yeah.
This you guys... I don't want you to feel safe.
Yeah, exactly.
I want you to maybe have an epiphany, maybe think about something.
Oh,
and that's...
Dude, now you're bringing up another tragedy, which is I have friends who are teachers in legit organizations, and you got to give trigger warnings when you're going to show a challenging movie. So, but challenging, I mean, like Cuckoo's Nest. Now, this is my point.
Oh, boy.
So the reason you have to trigger warn is that you have to say there are going to be some young ladies in the end of the movie who are perhaps underage. First of all, I never thought about that.
Oh, I didn't think about that either.
But that's the trigger warning. How about there's going to be a maniacal nurse who's trying to take away our hero's freedom, and our hero is batshit crazy kind of whatever that word is that we used to have in the 60s. He's an iconoclast. He's going against the system. That's the story in the movie. It's not the underage pals. So I even question, where the trigger warning's coming from. Like, shouldn't we be more horrified by authoritarianism or whatever the hell Nurse Ratched represents? So
we've gotten to a point though where, if we want to call it, because I feel that the blowback is about to happen, and it's going to be cool because you look at Disney buys Fox, so now they own these movies. They own Porky's. They own Revenge of the Nerds. You can't. What do you do with these movies?
That's
like all the boner comedies from the 80s.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do with them. Like, nobody's going to take Revenge of the Nerds and turn it into a prestige 6-episode thing. So it's like it's almost they bought the cow. And they used what they could, like, we wanted the X-Men, we wanted these properties. And now, from what I heard, they're selling off the properties.
Oh, really?
So we might be able to walk in, might be able to go and buy Revenge of the Nerds for a song.
Oh, yeah.
Not that I'd want to, but people say, like, how come, everything's gotten too woke, man? Yeah. It's too woke. And I'm like, here's what happens. When you push anybody in one direction, and I'm hoping it's just like the youth now, everything that's going on, they push back. And now I think we're at a point in cinema where the young kids who are making movies, they got to push back. Because look, man, I love those dopey Fast and the Furious movies. They're great. They're great. But let's face it, they're not nutritional.
No,
they don't. They have no fiber in them. They got nothing.
Damn, I don't even know if they have carbs anymore.
No. So what I'm going to ask from you is, you got somebody, a young person, and it doesn't even matter because now the technology is in everybody's hands. We can make a fucking movie with this phone. So anybody of any age, because I think sometimes we're like, you got to speak to the kids. And yeah, the kids are out there, but I think there's a lot of people that are 50, 60, 70 years old. They want to make a movie. Yeah. If someone said to you, listen, I want to make a movie. I'm going to make a genre because you know what I do? I'm a genre guy. Look, I enjoy films. I enjoy well-made films. I enjoy foreign films. But my meat and potatoes, what gets me off is the genre stuff. It is what it is. It's fine. I love it. That's who I am. So if somebody said to you, I want to make a genre picture, what would you say to them?
Well, I just had that call last week. Some guy reached out. I'm very, just very practical. I basically say you have to start building your movie and you collect images, not necessarily from the internet. In the old days, it'd be postcards, just stuff that struck you. And you have to work on your script and you have to have the confidence that it's not even confidence, but everything you're doing is making the movie. And so live your dream and don't wait for the money, like to just come drop into your lap. You have to work on that on the side as well, but own your movie. You're an artist or you're proclaiming to be an artist. You're a creative person. You're building something. So start doing it. And then you involve other people. You figure out, oh, this guy's great with a camera. Or maybe he has a camera. And then you figure out an actor that you like. And maybe if you want to try to raise the money, then you go to a casting person. You see you're already spending some money, and that's fine. This is not a free activity. But what I'm trying to do is free you up from thinking you can't do anything till you have the money. And you have to have the money because you have a lookbook and you have a script. All of those should be things that you're excited to do. In other words, don't always work for the man. Work for yourself, for your art. The film wants to exist, so help it come into fruition. And as I say, this doesn't disqualify from being obsessed about how you're going to find the money, but it can't just be that you've enslaved yourself to the system of genre making. You just picked up your phone. Yeah, make it on the phone. Yeah. And that doesn't mean you're sloppy. You can have Kubrick-sized dreams of symmetry, and you can have floating cameras. You can get equipment or, man up and do a handheld shot that looks good. Yeah. I mean, this is the other thing. It's 100 types of equipment you have to have just to do a smooth shot. This was my pride and joy, is my ability to be handheld. Yeah. And there is a difference between handheld and a dolly. So, okay, get a little scoochy scooch. Do what you have to do to fulfill the vision. Build that thing. And know on the other side, you're going to have to find an audience, because not only is the man in control of the finances, but then he's on the other side in control of distribution. So prepare yourself for disappointment and get it done yourself.
I think there's a myth, and the myth that we've all wanted to believe is that someday they're going to see me and a producer's going to come and he's going to save me and it's going to be... And that's not how it works, does it?
That's not how it works. No, you are going to save you. You are the artist and the suffering artist. Even what's the famous singer just wrote a thing about what's her album called? Not Britney Spears.
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift. Her thing's called the suffering artist, right?
Yeah, it's the suffering poets or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Weird. So who cares?
No, but that's an old tradition that she just reminded everyone of, reminded all the kids. So the point is this is, and also you're right. There's this notion that you'll be discovered and you'll go to Sundance and they'll give you a huge MG, which means minimum guarantee, which means you'll sell your movie for $1 million that you made for $250. Yeah, there's probably 3 or 4 times that happened, but there's a lot of times it didn't happen. And you walk away from Sundance or Slam Dance or Chattanooga, small festival, and you got nothing. Yeah. So then what are you going to do? You know what? If your movie's good, and this is not a new formula taking place of an old formula. This is all a negotiation with your talent, your abilities, your ability to lead and engage people and get them involved. That's how you build the movie. But then getting it out there, that's a whole nother set of...
Yeah.
And I self-distributed habit. It was not taken by fancy festivals. And then it was in some regional festivals, and I cherished it. And I met people and had a great time showing my movie. And then nothing happened. Nobody bought it. Nothing happened. I said, well, that's ridiculous. I still believe in this movie. So I self-distributed. You call up the theater. Hey, what kind of deal can we make?
Yep. Because
I didn't put money towards that, except for, making I designed all the ads in newspapers, and you have to decide, is it worth $300, an extra inch, blah, blah, blah. All of those fun things. Is it a vampire movie? Do I try to promote it some other way so it sneaks up on you? I don't know. These were great questions to have. And then I would call the Laemmle Theater in LA and say, will you show my movie? And he'd say, I'll do it with this split. If you guarantee me you'll do 3 ads, then we'll make a deal. So that was the thing. I didn't pay these theaters to show it. I made deals with the theaters.
Yeah.
And then it got some good reviews, and it sort of took hold, and it was what it was. And I applied that to all the movies that I produced, like Ty West. We put his movie in the theater, The Roost.
Yep.
That was a big sale because it's Ty. Ty's got the magic touch. So then we actually had some money in the kitty to make a few other cool movies and all this kind of thing. And so we were off and running and producing. One guy we haven't mentioned is Jim Mickle. He's just very beloved to me. He made Stakeland, and he worked with Nick D'Amici. And then
Stakeland is so good.
So good. It just holds up because there's a million people wandering in the apocalypse movies. But I think Stakeland just has real sweet sauce. And that's because Mickle is such a decent, it just got a great vibe.
I always thought that picture was going to break. Sometimes you see a movie and you're like, oh, this is going to cross over. And I saw tremendous potential in Stakeland to be that movie and for whatever reason, and you can't quantify that. You don't know.
Yeah, and crossover, what does it mean? I mean, I think it probably influenced people in a way. Of course. And of course, Mickle cashed that in and slowly built his career. He made 2 other movies. We Are What We Are, the American version of a Mexican cannibal movie. And then he made Cold in July, which was an adaptation of a book. Great movie.
I love that movie.
Yeah, these are they're meat and potatoes movies. That's his aesthetic. And then he's done, then he had a TV show called Hap and Leonard. And then he's done one Netflix movie. I can't remember the name, something about a moon. And then he did the Sweet Tooth.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that's very much his world, that kind of post-apocalyptic. And it's where you can see now suddenly, like wouldn't be considered a political filmmaker, but he's interested in the same things that I'm interested in terms of like, how do people get along? What are the factions? And that's the cool thing about Stakeland is it is politically minded, or you just realize, in the apocalypse, certain power structures start existing, but it never feels preachy. It just feels like true. So he's one of my beloved Glass Eye directors, and and then James McKinney makes really offbeat movies. Automaton, Satan Hates You, which is a great title because
come on,
kind of true. Yeah. I mean, he's Satan,
or does he?
Or does he? Yeah. So
there was a movie, We Are Still Here, and that movie scared the hell out of me.
Good.
And for whatever reason, I'm just like, you were involved with that though, right?
I was an actor. I mean, I'm a pal of Ted's. He invited me to come in and do that part, and I knew Travis Stevens because he's also really was an important producer before he's moved on to directing. And this was actually one of his last pieces where he was producing. So it was a really great team. And then, of course, Barbara was there. So I was, just a supporter. I wasn't involved in a particular way. And anything Ted says nice about me contributing is just that I was, a fan and a pal.
And he did the Brooklyn 4 or 5.
Yep. There again, I was just an actor.
That was a great movie.
Yeah, I love that
I
movie.
really love that movie.
It's really cool.
And I didn't see, it's one of those movies where it's like, nobody's doing this. This is a different kind of story.
Totally.
I don't see this coming. And it shocked the hell out of me. I'm like, wow. I'm like,
it's really a cool movie in the sense that it's so singular. It's easily described as like a play or like an old-fashioned movie. But I think the old-fashioned only comes from its World War II. They're all prattling on about 1945 is the title's explanation. And then, but he wrote it with his dad, so it has a lot of reference. His dad was not only a veteran, but he was also a historian. So I think that movie's just very special and very specific, and it came from just
a real place.
Of caring. And I mean, the story has it that the night Ted talked to his dad and said he'd made several revisions over their collaboration. And the dad said, yeah, that's it. We're done. Pencils down. And he died that night.
Jesus Christ.
Isn't that incredible? So Ted was so determined. I mean, the movie was haunted in a very beautiful way by his affection for his pop and their legacy together. So that made it special.
I believe that every artist, especially directors, writers, even actors, they're working something out. We talk about a lot of times that there's something, you get to a point in your life, you know, obviously with Ted, it was his dad, and you're working that thing out. It becomes a larger commitment because now is it the commitment to the movie? Is it the commitment to my father? Is it both?
Yeah, of course.
And I feel like there's a lot of themes that people, especially artists, they're trying to work through. Yeah. And sometimes they're using film as a form of therapy. And that's why we love this, because it's so much more. People think like, well, it was a movie, we threw it on, you know, and then we fell asleep. Well, yeah, but to the people who made it, it's a little bit different.
Oh, yeah. And you can feel different levels of commitment and passion and bravery. You know, that's the other thing. If you stray outside of the expected norms, there's a certain bravery there. And, you know, also the other thing I like to say is that, you know, one thing you can do with no budget at all is expose some of yourself, because this is the actual gift that no one can throw money at. If so, you know, that's just a way of talking about being honest, being truthful, and it doesn't affect the medium. In other words, I'm not saying tell a realistic story and have everybody talk the way. No, it could be a fantasy film. Of course, that's what we're talking about is horror and fantasy. And the whole point is let's bring truth into that space. And that's where it gets exciting because people connect. Is
there a degree that now that you've done so much, you've accomplished so much, that you have a greater sense of vulnerability that you're able to portray in your acting and your films?
I don't know. If you think about it, Habit, I'm pretty vulnerable there. I'm really a mess, and I'm naked half the time, and I'm pining away for this girl, and I'm a real, pretty ineffective character. So I feel like that was fairly vulnerable depiction of myself since I'm playing him. But I try to bring that, not tiresome vulnerability, but I try to explore that. And heroism, too, is worth exploring in its own way. And when people have had enough. I mean, we all like, I don't know what they're called, you know, revenge type stories. When somebody breaks and they go, no way, this is not going to stand. And whatever, you know, the context of the movie, that's a specific kind of satisfaction. Even in Blackout, there's sort of a twist there where he's sort of, the whole time he's just pining away and all long in the face and apologizing and dragging his feet. And then he sort of says, well, but I am a werewolf, so maybe I could do something with this. And that's how I perceive it. I don't know if the audience is exhausted by the time they get there, but that's my little trope in that movie.
I saw the Curse of the Werewolf influence.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because that's one of my favorites. And and the reason is that
Oliver Reed, man. Oh my God.
It's one of those things where it's like, everybody does their own kind of werewolf. Joe Dante's werewolves are very different from, you know, everybody's got their own vibe, and they use, it's like vampires are always like, well, it's sex, it's blood. We know what to expect. I think in the 80s we had that explosion. We had like Lost Boys, and these are sexy vampires. Interview to Vampires, sexy vampires.
That's right.
Werewolves are a little bit different.
Yeah.
Was it fun to finally be able to make your version of the Wolfman, we'll just say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I cherished it. And, I did it. I like to say, so Alex Hurt plays the werewolf, the guy you called a kid.
Yeah.
He's in his 30s, I think.
Jesus.
But, I would have played it, but I knew that I was too old. So I made Alex move the way I wanted him and everything, and he was really committed. But the reason I even made the movie is that I hung out with him on a previous film. My son directed a war movie, of all things. No money, but we dug a hole in the front yard and made this great war movie. So Alex was amazing in it, and we were talking, and I saw a kind of a vulnerability in him and a kind of a melancholy, and I was like, that's the werewolf. And he, because
that translates.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, because you couldn't remember his name, I don't know if you even tracked that's his father's William Hurt, the famous actor.
Get out of town.
That's why they're photographs of William Hurt.
Altered states.
With his son, yeah. So his dad had passed before we made the movie, but I'd already written the script. So weirdly enough, it was just like, oh my God, this is so much like my life. He'd also had a bout with alcoholism, Alex. So all those things, that's when I knew, I can make my modern werewolf movie, because I've met this guy who has so many of these, if you will, problems, and just his whole psychology. And best of all, the reason he became an actor is from the old Universal movies. He loved Boris Karloff and Lon Chaney. It wasn't that his dad was an actor. It's that he was a kid who loved those movies.
And there's a sense of pathos. And
I think so.
There's a lot of, because he's creating art. He's creating the art of his experience, and that's his way of expressing the trauma of what's going on with the lycanthropy. Yeah. Am I saying it right? Lycanthropy?
That sounds fantastic. It sounds like we're making really sophisticated pictures.
It just, there's, and that's the other thing. He's creating this artwork based on what he's going through.
Yeah.
And it's all kind of like this weird Inception style shit where it's like, but there's something that he's able to convey on screen. Even stuff when he's not speaking. I like the stuff where he wasn't even talking.
Yeah.
Because he's able, there's just this sadness.
Yeah.
And I think that's key for a good werewolf story, because every good monster story is really a tragedy.
Exactly.
Right?
Of course. Yeah.
It's always the lost love, what could have been, the longing. And that's the romanticism about monster movies.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's a funny word to use. But I say I'm a romantic, and everybody's like, with the ladies, I'm like, no. It's a whole other concept.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. And, I think some people are just, I always say, it's just the way I'm wired.
Yeah.
I think I popped out of the womb just appreciating the dark side. I think if you have heightened sensitivity, you may like horror, because you can see that the world is so fragile, and you want to express that with a certain kind of rage. So it does feel adjacent to certain kinds of punk music, and just like, there's that outburst, which is sort of the horror part, but then there's the melancholy under it, Anyway, not to psychoanalyze an entire group of people, but
it's fine.
You go to horror conventions, and they're just very wonderful people who are tapped into that genre.
There's a sense of catharsis from the medium.
Yeah.
And
a sense of yearning, like you said,
And the reason that I love horror is because it's so pliable. You can make a Tim Burton movie like, The Nightmare Before Christmas. It's still horror.
Of course.
You can make Joe Dante's Gremlins. It's still horror.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a very pliable medium. And I think that's why it's such a great vessel for storytelling.
Totally. And I had mentioned some extreme movies, and they're way more. I mean, I don't get into Inside, and some of those are, I watch them with one eye closed.
Yeah.
But the point is talking about pliable, there's also just that. There's the brutality all the way to, as you say, like Tim Burton, like Edward Scissorhands. Yeah. That's certainly a horror.
That's a monster. He's a monster.
Exactly. But the ultimate, the real Frankenstein thing of why was I created, and
what is my purpose?
Why do I look weird?
Why don't I look like them?
Yeah, exactly. Which if this isn't the human condition, I don't know what is.
Vincent Price, the creator, and I did the best I could.
Yeah, exactly.
I did what I could.
Whoops, I forgot these. So beautiful, so beautiful.
What's the one that got away? The one picture that you tried to make, you couldn't get it made, or your white whale, so to speak.
Oh, I've got them. They're not. I always, the other thing I say in my little speech about how to make a movie and, to nurture your own talent and your idea, the thing that's making you want to do, blah, blah, all that. And by the way, I was trying to put that in juxtaposition to like making a movie so I'll get famous, or just some other more transactional relationship. I don't think that is going to get you anywhere. I mean, it could. That's the point. It does to some people, that when you just go for the budget. But I was just trying to wax poetic a little bit about the true artistic experience. Anyway, the one that got away, they're not all horror movies. Oh, I was going to say, I don't believe in writing endless scripts if you're not going to be able to make it. So for a long time, I learned that you just have to focus on one movie. And I did that all the way through Depraved. It took me 9 years of this and that. But in the meantime, I did acquire some other scripts or wrote them. And I got a great movie about, well, you see, my movies are sort of the moment. It takes place in Mexico. It's my zombie movie, but it's about water. And it's beautiful. And it's really about two brothers and the collapse of America. So it still could play. But I didn't apply that same amount of absolutely insist on making this movie. That's what it takes. And now I'm in a place where I'm like, I give up of trying to find the big money. I'll make movies for very little. I'm getting old. I got to wrap this up, meaning make a few more things. So but there's some scripts I wish anyway, that one I wanted zombies. I don't even want to say it because I still think I could do it, but just the way I treated those monsters, it's such a cool, and I lived in Mexico.
Really?
Enough that I have all the pictures. I know exactly, the locations, and I just, but I went to Participant, which is now closed.
Yeah.
Because it had a water theme, I thought, well, I can pitch it like an echo horror. And they had just remade The Crazy, speaking of Romero. So they were like, nah, we just did our water movie. I'm like, well, it's totally different, but whatever. And I even had cast committed, but I guess I gave up. So I don't know why I'm focusing on that. I got a couple like that. But some of them aren't horror. That's the other thing. Beautiful, sentimental movie about a circus.
Ooh.
And I wrote 2 scripts for Ron Perlman and Tom Waits to be brothers. And Waits read one of them and he said, I'm not going to play a musician, Larry. I am a musician. And I was like, oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
So then I wrote a circus movie for the 2 of them. And I couldn't get back to Waits. So anyway, those are sweet movies too.
It's one of those things where, people talk about the horror ghetto. And and you look at guys like Jordan Peele. And look, Jordan, he's an anomaly, but it's always been very hard to escape the horror ghetto.
Well, look at, I love the Meryl Streep movie that, I love that it exists. I don't even know if I've seen it, but, by Wes Craven.
Oh, Music of the Heart.
There you go.
Yeah.
And, that was his desperate attempt to crawl out. And he got one of the great actors of all time. And I assume it's a sweet movie. I don't know.
It's good. That was his.
But then they sent him right back to the ghetto.
That was his Faustian bargain with Harvey Weinstein.
Oh.
Notorious enemy of this show.
Oh, well, no doubt. Enemy of most people.
If he was in better shape, I would challenge him to a boxing match.
Yeah, exactly.
But
he looks pretty.
He's a punk.
Beat up. Yeah.
But we will take his money.
Yeah.
The reality of it is that, you got to take the money from where it comes. It doesn't matter. Now people were telling me, I'm reading articles like the producers don't exist anymore. I'm like, well, then everything's going to be a fucking negative pickup deal. Then what do I need you for? What do I need you for? Distribution? You're doing distribution?
Well,
if you're not going to pay for it, where's the fucking infrastructure?
Yeah.
We all grew up in the shadow of these studios.
Yep.
And you're seeing they're collapsing. They're coming apart. They're being sold off. They're, it's what they fear.
They're serving this bottom line that, superheroes, if you like them, that's fine. But let's face it, no matter what, it's too much. Mm-hmm. Back off or make room for some other shit. You know what I mean? The whole debate is exhausting because, no, dramas are done on TV. Yeah, well, they take 10 hours to tell a story that's supposed to take 90 minutes. So that's not really a safe haven for quote adult dramas. And then, I mean, once again, horror is still
It's
golden
evergreen.
boy because it's you'd still make standalone single movies. It's fine if you do spin-offs and or whatever they're called, sequels.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is horror still counts on an outstanding single thing movie. Like whatever, talk to me, whatever, choose your movie of the moment. But they're at least those are cool and they punch through. So horror is the savior of cinema and therefore humanity.
Yep.
It's as simple as that.
It packs them in.
Yeah.
It packs them in. Everybody.
Exactly.
It's,
that and Men in Tights.
You
gotta wonder what's going on with the kids.
Never underestimate the power of two oiled up men.
Yeah,
Two sweaty men on sweaty men.
That's right.
Listen, I guess this is the part where we're going to plug stuff. If you want to plug stuff, we could plug Blackout. You can get it.
Yeah, it's on online. It's streaming.
It's out there.
Yeah, it's out there.
You can catch it like a cold.
That's right. But make sure you're getting the right Blackout, or at least my Blackout
Yeah.
is the right one in this conversation. You can tell because I put the werewolf on the poster. I'm like, let's cut to the chase, folks.
You gotta look. You're either putting the monster, the boobs. You're putting something on
You
there.
got to put something. Bring in the crowds.
Yeah, I don't want. I don't want to be disingenuous with my art.
That's
like,
right.
well, that's the thing is a lot of times with the video boxes, the monster movies, you would see this cool monster like they're remaking Deathstalker. And producer Pete knows these guys. And there was a monster on the box of Deathstalker. And we're like, wow, that's such a cool monster. That monster is nowhere near that fucking
exist.
movie.
Oh,
and that's
so
when
funny.
when I was a kid, I learned that's truth in advertising. But
Yeah.
they're remaking the movie. We're going to get the monster.
I love it. I hope it's exactly from the cover of the VHS.
Yeah.
Well, then you have, like Pumpkinhead. They really delivered on him.
I mean, look.
What a beautiful thing that is.
Yeah, Stan Winston, rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Stan.
To me, he's probably my favorite. I mean, his designs. I got a tattoo of the Terminator, the T-800.
Oh, nice.
Because it's what's inside of us, and it's
yeah, exactly.
At Terminator. That was another genre guy, James Cameron. He's look. Do I love these Avatar movies? Not necessarily. I think they're good. But look, people develop, people change. So that's why when I say like, hey, look, they expect a certain thing from you, and you'll get financing or you'll get distribution because you have that commodity or that audience.
Of course, yeah.
But you can always take a chance, right? I mean,
yeah,
Larry, take a chance. Because I could see you could do anything. If you can do horror, it's a malleable genre. You can do anything.
Right.
Because there's so much in Blackout that you're saying.
Yeah.
And guys, look, you can get it. It's on Apple. It's on Vudu. It's on, I don't even know. Are these real things? Am I saying real things anymore?
Well, you've just described two things that exist in the world, apples and voodoo. But I don't know.
Larry, that's our movie. Apples and voodoo.
Apples and voodoo, man. We're going to make millions.
That's it. Ladies and gentlemen, Larry, God bless you. Thank you. Thank you for coming in here and speaking with me. I really am very appreciative. You are called the maestro for a reason. You are the John Cassavetes of horror.
Oh, well, listen, man, thank you, because this has been therapy. It's great to talk it out. Just talk it out,
Larry and
I feel like I've been to a very successful AA meeting.
That's it. This was our 12th step.
Yeah, this is our 12th step. Fantastic.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Jerry Horror. This has been The Offering. It's always horror, but mostly, wait, no, I said it wrong, didn't I? Don't worry about it. Can we throw in an old one? Can we just, it's one from fucking 12 episodes ago?
No, this is you busting out. It's gonna be changed every time, gonna be different.
Should be different.
So they have to listen.
He's not wrong, Pete, because I can't remember shit. That's it. You want me to a rubbery monster movie? The cover, I know it. None of this shit.
I can see it.
Yeah, I don't know where any of this is getting me in life, but Larry, thank you.
Thanks, man.
This has been an absolutely incredible episode, and I can't thank Larry enough for showing up and showing me the love that he did. A lot of times you have a guy who's as experienced as him or who has this station or level of achievement in life, and they don't really open up the door and show you how the sausage is made. And that's the difference with Larry. He showed us from the rooter to the tutor how the sausage is made. He showed us the whole thing and how it works. There's always a mentor figure. There's always somebody, whether it's Obi-Wan Kenobi or, you have Mr. Miyagi, you always have a mentor figure who's there to show you the way, to show you the secrets and how this is all done. Larry just opened the door and he said, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you how this is done, how you build a career, how you make a living, how you turn your dreams, into something that's not just your passion, but into something that can become a lifestyle, something that can become an enduring piece of artwork, and how you birth that into the world. So again, Larry, thank you so much for being here today. You're an incredible inspiration to filmmakers everywhere, not just horror, not just genre, but to people who want to pursue their passion, whether it be filmmaking, editing, directing, producing. You need somebody to guide you along the way. And hopefully you listen to this episode today, you can take some of the knowledge you dropped on us and you can apply that to your craft. And you there in turn can become a better artist. And at the end of the day, we all just want to be a little bit better than we were yesterday. That's all we can ask for, right? Don't forget, folks, season 4 is on the way. And man, you have no idea, because it is going to blow your mind. This season, we've got some really crazy stories. I've been able to do some research, go in the trenches, talk to some people, get some secrets out of them. And man, strap in, buckle up. It's going to be crazy. I'm Jerry Horror. This has been The Offering. Mostly horror, always genre. You've been listening to The Offering with Jerry Horror. I'm very sorry. Produced by Pete Bune. If you have a question or a story you want to share with me, we'd love to hear from you. You can email me at jerryhorror@gmail.com or hit us up at Twitter @jerryhorror or on Instagram @jerryhorror. You getting the picture? Subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever fine podcasts are provided for you and your family. I want you to enjoy. Just join us next time for another offering.
This has been a Sick Boy Wolfgang production. Thank you for listening.